I still remember that day, the day my heart broke into 1,000 tiny pieces. The sound of wedding bells echoed through the air, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I stood outside the grand hall, clutching the small gift I had wrapped with trembling hands, a pair of gold cufflinks I had saved for years to give my son on his special day. But I never got the chance, because before I could even step inside, my own son had me thrown out of his wedding. It's strange how life comes full circle. I raised him alone after his father passed away. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I skipped meals so he could eat. I wore the same old coat for years while saving every penny for his education. And now, standing there uninvited, unwanted, I could barely recognize the man he'd become. When I arrived at the venue, I noticed the looks from people, those judgmental stares. I was wearing my best dress, though it was old and faded, and my shoes were worn out. But I didn't care. I was here for my son, not for appearances. I had imagined hugging him, tears in both our eyes, as he'd say, "Mom, I'm so glad you came." But instead, his fiancée's mother, a woman with diamond earrings and a smile sharper than glass, whispered something into his ear. And just like that, everything changed. He turned toward me, his face pale. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he said, his voice cold, like he was talking to a stranger. I froze. "What do you mean?" "I came to see my son get married." His bride-to-be, Emily, stood beside him, glaring at me with that same disdain I'd seen when she visited our home once. The time she called it too small and too depressing. Before I could say another word, 2 security guards approached. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we've been asked to escort you out." I thought it was a joke. I laughed nervously. "Escort me out? I'm his mother." But then I looked into my son's eyes, and saw no warmth, no love, just embarrassment. He couldn't even look at me. "Please, Mom," he said softly, "not today. You'll cause a scene." That was the moment my world stopped. My knees felt weak, my vision blurred, and the gift slipped from my hand, landing on the floor with a soft thud. I whispered, "You're ashamed of me?" But he didn't answer. He just turned away. As the guards gently guided me out, I felt every eye in the room piercing my back. My heart screamed inside me, but no sound came out. Outside, I sat on the curb, the sound of laughter and music echoing from inside. The same laughter I once dreamed of sharing with him on this very day. But I didn't leave. Something inside me refused to move. Maybe it was a mother's stubborn love, or maybe I needed to know why. Why my own child would choose humiliation over love. Hours passed before I saw them coming out for photos. I stayed hidden behind a pillar watching him smile. The same smile that used to light up my world. But now that smile belonged to someone else. Then, as I was about to leave, I overheard something that made my heart race. Emily's mother was talking to a man in a suit, a lawyer, I think. She said, "Now that she's out of the picture, we can proceed with the inheritance documents. He'll sign them right after the honeymoon." Inheritance? My eyes widened. What were they talking about? I didn't understand. But I knew one thing, something wasn't right. That woman had always been too interested in my son's finances. And I suddenly remembered something. A few months earlier, I had found a letter addressed to my son from a lawyer. It mentioned property rights and legal transfer. But he took it from me before I could read it. That night, as I sat alone in my tiny apartment, I couldn't sleep. Every second replayed in my mind. His cold eyes, her smug smile, and those words, inheritance documents. I decided I couldn't just sit quietly. A mother's love isn't blind. It sees deeper than anyone else. And my instincts screamed that my son was in danger, not physically, but emotionally, financially, and morally. So I began to dig. I called an old friend, David, who had once worked as a clerk in a law firm. I told him everything. He hesitated at first but promised to look into any documents related to my son's name. Days passed with no news. I was losing hope, until one evening my phone rang. It was David. His voice trembled. "Mary, you were right. Something's going on. I found your late husband's property listed under your son's name. But here's the thing, it was transferred right after he got engaged to that girl. And guess who's managing it now?" "Who?" I whispered. "Emily's mother." My heart sank. That woman wasn't just trying to separate me from my son. She was trying to own him piece by piece. And I realized then my son had no idea what he'd walked into. But I wasn't about to lose him without a fight. That night I packed my bag, put on my coat and swore to myself I would uncover the truth, even if it meant confronting every lie they built around him. I didn't know then that what I was about to find would destroy everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family, because what I discovered next would change my life forever. The next morning I took the earliest bus to the city. My hands trembled as I held onto my purse, where I'd tucked away every bit of proof I could find. Old property documents, photographs, even the letter I had once seen in my son's drawer. I didn't know exactly what I was walking into, but I knew one thing. That woman, Emily's mother, had plans far bigger than I'd imagined. The city was loud and fast, a world my old bones weren't used to anymore. But my love for my son was stronger than my fear. I reached David's office, where he handed me a thin brown envelope. "These are copies of the property transfers," he said, glancing around nervously. "Your husband's estate, it was meant to go to you first, but the will was changed after his death. Someone forged your signature." I felt my breath catch. Forged my signature? But why would they? He interrupted. Because they needed your son to have access. Once everything was under his name, it became easy to manipulate him. I sat there in silence trying to process it. My late husband's home, the one we built together, was being used by strangers. And my son was just a pawn. That night I went to his apartment. I hadn't been there since he moved in with Emily. When I knocked on the door, she opened it, her expression turning sour the second she saw me. "Oh, it's you," she muttered. "What do you want?" "I need to speak to my son," I said calmly. "He's not here," she replied quickly, but I could hear footsteps inside. I looked past her shoulder, and there he was, my son, standing behind her, frozen. "Daniel," I whispered. "Please, I need to talk to you." He sighed. "Mom, I told you not to come here." "Just 5 minutes," I pleaded. "Please." Emily rolled her eyes. "Fine. 5 minutes. But make it quick." I stepped inside, and the moment I did, I noticed how different everything felt. Expensive furniture, designer curtains, things Daniel could never have afforded on his salary. "Where did all this come from?" I asked. He avoided my eyes. "Emily's mom helped us out. She's been good to us, Mom. You should try to see that." "Good to you," I said softly. "She's using you, Daniel. That property transfer, it's not right. I've seen the documents. She's managing your inheritance for herself." His face darkened. "Mom, stop. You're making things up again. You just can't accept that I'm happy." Happy? That word stung like a knife. "Daniel, please listen. Someone forged my signature after your father died. This isn't about happiness. It's about the truth." Emily's tone turned sharp. "That's enough. You're ruining everything with your paranoia." But I saw something just for a second in my son's eyes. Doubt. Confusion. He wasn't entirely convinced by her anymore. I left quietly after that. But I knew I had planted a seed. A week later I received a letter, and signed no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Emily's mother sitting in a lawyer's office, handing over a thick envelope marked property transfer agreement. On the back someone had scribbled, "You were right." My hand shook as I read those words. Who sent it? Was it the lawyer? Or someone from inside their circle? That night I couldn't sleep. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I went straight to the law office whose name appeared on the envelope. When I got there, I asked to speak to the man in the photo, Mr. Collins. At first, he denied knowing anything. But when I showed him the picture, his expression changed. "Look," he said quietly, "I don't want trouble. That woman, Mrs. Parker, she told me the documents were authorized. I didn't know there was forgery involved. Please don't drag me into this." "Then tell me where she keeps the originals," I demanded. He hesitated, then scribbled an address on a piece of paper. "That's her private office. You didn't hear it from me." I left without a word, my heart pounding. I went straight to that address, a luxurious office downtown. Through the glass window, I saw shelves lined with files and documents. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, an old woman driven by pain and love. I waited until evening, until the office lights dimmed and the staff left. Then I knocked. To my surprise, the door opened, and standing there was Emily herself. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "Did your mother send you to hide the papers?" She froze for a moment, her lips trembling. Then she said quietly, "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Thompson." Something in her tone changed. It wasn't anger, it was fear. Before I could respond, the door behind her opened again, and her mother appeared. Her eyes narrowed as she saw me. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" she hissed. "Old women like you should know their place." I stood tall. "My place is beside my son, and I will not rest until he knows what you've done." She laughed. "Your son? Oh dear, he already knows. He just doesn't care." For a moment my heart stopped. "What do you mean?" She smirked, stepping closer. "Daniel made his choice. He signed the documents himself willingly. We didn't force him. Maybe you should ask yourself why." Her words echoed in my ears long after I left that building. Could it be true? Had my son known all along? That night I sat alone in the dark, the city lights flickering outside my window. I kept thinking about what she said. He signed willingly. No, my son wasn't like that. Something else was going on. But I didn't realize the truth would come to me sooner than I expected. And it would be darker than anything I could have imagined. Because 2 days later Daniel showed up at my door. His eyes were red, his hands trembling. And the first thing he said shattered my heart. "Mom, I made a terrible mistake." When Daniel said those words, "Mom, I made a terrible mistake," my knees nearly gave out. I guided him to the sofa, my hands trembling as I poured him a glass of water. His face looked pale, his voice hollow. "I didn't listen to you," he said quietly. "I should have. You were right about them. About everything." My heart clenched. "Tell me, Daniel. Please tell me what happened." He buried his face in his hands. After the wedding, things changed. Emily became distant. Her mother started controlling everything, our bank accounts, the house, even the bills. She said it was for our financial safety. But then I found out she sold Dad's old property, the one you and he built together. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "She sold it? Without your permission?" He nodded. "She said I'd signed it over during the legal transfers before the wedding. I didn't even realize what I was signing. She and Emily told me it was just paperwork for insurance. Mom, they took everything." I placed my hand on his. "We'll fix this, Daniel. We'll get it all back." He shook his head. "That's not all." His voice cracked. "Mom, Emily's pregnant. Or at least she said she was." My heart stopped. "Said?" He nodded slowly. "She told me she was pregnant right after I found out about the property. I think she lied to stop me from leaving. But yesterday I found a hospital report. She's not pregnant. She never was." My chest tightened. "Oh, Daniel." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "She used me, Mom. I thought she loved me, but it was all about the money. And when I confronted her about it, she said if I told anyone, she'd ruin me. She said no one would believe me." I pulled him close, feeling his body shake. "You're my son. And I believe you." For a long time we sat there, both of us silent. The rain began to fall outside, tapping gently against the window like a sad melody. But inside me something shifted. The pain I had felt all these months began to harden into resolve. The next morning we went together to David's office. He reviewed the documents Daniel brought with him, the ones he had secretly taken from Emily's mother's office before leaving. David's face went pale as he read through them. "These are fraudulent," he said. "Every single one. There's enough here to open a full investigation." I looked at my son. "We can do this. We can take back what's ours." But just as hope began to flicker, fate had other plans. That evening when we returned home, the door to my small apartment was already open. The lights were off and the living room was a mess, papers scattered, drawers overturned. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. Daniel grabbed a baseball bat from near the door, moving cautiously. "Stay behind me, Mom," he whispered. We heard footsteps in the kitchen. When Daniel turned the corner, the sound stopped. And there, under the dim light, stood Emily. Her mascara was smudged, her hair messy, and she looked desperate. "Daniel," she said in a trembling voice, "please, You don't understand. He stared at her in disbelief. What are you doing here? Did you do this? Tears welled in her eyes. My mother, she's dangerous. You have no idea what she's capable of. She made me do it, all of it. I didn't want to hurt you. I stepped closer. So all of this, the wedding, the lies, the property, it was her plan? She nodded. Yes. She told me to marry Daniel so she could gain access to the inheritance. But after she got it, she wanted to get rid of him. She said he was useless now. I didn't know she would go this far. Daniel clenched his fists. Go this far? What do you mean? Emily's voice broke. She hired someone to make it look like you stole the money. She said she'd file charges next week. You'll go to prison, Daniel. My heart froze. We have to stop her. Emily shook her head. You can't. She has everything, documents, fake witnesses, lawyers. She planned this from the start. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then I said, if she wants a fight, she'll get one. Daniel looked at me. Mom, what are you planning? I took a deep breath. She underestimated one thing. A mother's will to protect her child. If she wants to destroy us, I'll make sure she falls with us. The next morning, we went to the police station with David and Emily, who agreed to testify against her own mother. The officers listened carefully as we presented the documents, the forged signatures, the fake pregnancy scheme. At first, they seemed doubtful. Until Emily handed over a hidden USB drive she said she had taken from her mother's desk. It contained voice recordings, her mother's voice, clearly plotting everything. Once he signs, we'll sell it all. The old woman will be out of the picture. He's too weak to fight back. The officers exchanged looks. It was enough to open a full case. As we left the station, Daniel finally smiled for the first time in months. We did it, Mom, he said softly. It's over. But deep down I knew it wasn't over yet. People like her, they don't give up so easily. That night I woke to a sound outside my window. When I peeked through the curtain, I saw a car parked across the street. And inside I could swear I saw her, Emily's mother, staring right at me. She didn't move. She just sat there, her cold eyes glinting under the streetlight. And that's when I realized the real fight was just beginning. Because by morning something unthinkable would happen. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. I kept replaying that cold stare from the car, those eyes that had already taken everything from me once. But this time, I wasn't the same helpless old woman standing outside a wedding. I was a mother ready to protect her son, no matter the cost. By dawn the car was gone. I stepped outside into the chill morning air, half expecting her to jump out from the shadows. Nothing. Just silence. But deep inside I knew it wasn't over. Later that morning the police called. They told us that Emily's mother, Mrs. Parker, had vanished. Her office was cleared out, her accounts frozen, and her phone disconnected. Emily broke down when she heard the news. She's going to run, she cried. She'll never stop until she destroys you, Daniel. I turned to her and said quietly, then we'll find her first. Days passed with no trace of her. But then one afternoon David called me. Mary, he said, his voice urgent. I found something. There's a safe deposit box under her name at Westview Bank. It's been accessed recently. My heart skipped. Do you think she's hiding the rest of the documents there? Maybe, he said. But if you want proof that could finish her, that's where it'll be. That evening Daniel and I drove to the bank. I could see the worry on his face, a mix of fear and regret. Mom, he said softly, I don't deserve you. After what I did. Throwing you out like that, treating you like you didn't matter. I reached over and held his hand. You're my son. Nothing you do can change that. You were blind, but love can blind the best of us. What matters is that you see clearly now. When we reached the bank, David was already waiting. He had arranged for the police to meet us there. We entered the vault area, my heart pounding. A young officer opened the metal box with a warrant, and inside lay stacks of papers, bank receipts, forged property deeds, and a small black notebook. David flipped it open. Look at this, he whispered. She wrote everything down, every payment, every forgery, every fake signature. The officer nodded. This is more than enough to arrest her. I finally exhaled, feeling the weight of years of pain lift just a little. "It's over," I whispered. But just as we turned to leave, a loud voice echoed through the corridor. "No, it's not." We froze. Standing at the end of the hallway was Mrs. Parker herself. Her face was pale, her lipstick smeared, and her eyes wild. "You think you can take everything from me?" she shouted. "After all I built? You ruined my daughter's life." Emily, who had come with us but stayed near the entrance, stepped forward trembling. "You ruined your own life, Mother. You ruined mine too. Stop this." Mrs. Parker's voice cracked. "You ungrateful child. Everything I did was for you." "No," I said, stepping forward, my voice firm but calm. "Everything you did was for yourself, for greed. You used love as a weapon, and you thought no one would see through you." Her eyes darted between me and Daniel. "And you," she hissed. "You pathetic boy. I made you rich, and this is how you repay me?" Daniel clenched his fists. "You didn't make me rich. You just made me realize what matters, and it's not money." The officers began to approach her, but she suddenly reached into her coat and pulled out a lighter. "If I can't have it, no one will," she screamed, flicking the flame toward the open safe box. I didn't think, I just ran. Years of age, pain, and fear disappeared in a flash of pure instinct. I grabbed her wrist, and the lighter fell to the floor, flames licking the edge of a paper. Daniel stomped it out, coughing as smoke filled the air. The officers quickly restrained her. She screamed and kicked, shouting curses until her voice broke. And then as they dragged her away, she looked straight at me and spat. "You'll regret this." I stood there, trembling but unbroken. "I already have," I said softly. "But not anymore." After that night, everything moved fast. The police charged Mrs. Parker with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Emily testified against her mother in court, her voice shaking as she confessed everything. Daniel was cleared of all involvement, and the stolen assets were returned. It took months, but finally life began to settle. Daniel and Emily decided to separate, realizing their love was built on lies and manipulation. She moved to another city to start fresh, and Daniel came back home to my home, the one I thought I had lost forever. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel looked at me with teary eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "how did you do it? How did you keep fighting when everyone turned against you, even me?" I smiled faintly, my wrinkled hand covering his. "Because when you're a mother, love doesn't end when your child makes mistakes. It ends when you give up on them. And I never gave up on you." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I don't deserve you." "You do now," I said. For a long time we sat there in silence, the air filled with peace, the kind I hadn't felt in years. But deep inside I also knew something else. Pain changes people. It can make them bitter, or it can make them strong. And I chose strength. Weeks later, the court officially restored everything that had been taken from us. When I stood there holding the old deed to our family home, I felt like my husband was right there beside me, smiling proudly. That night, I placed the gold cufflinks, the ones I had once meant to give Daniel at his wedding, on the table beside his dinner plate. When he saw them, he froze. "Are these?" he whispered. I nodded. I kept them, waiting for the right moment. He picked them up gently, tears in his eyes. "I don't deserve to wear them." I smiled through my tears. "You do now, son. You've earned them, not through success but through redemption." He hugged me tightly, and for the first time in years I felt whole again. As the night grew quiet, I looked out the window at the stars and whispered to myself, "You took everything from me once, life, but you gave me something greater in return, the strength to rise." And though my story began with pain, it ended with forgiveness. Because sometimes the most shocking thing you can say isn't in anger but in grace. And that night at our dinner table I finally said it. "I forgive you, Daniel, for everything." He broke down in tears, holding my hands. "Mom, I love you." And I smiled, whispering back, "I know, son." I never stopped,